Hey y'all, it's DIY Alex back with another tutorial. Today we are going a little on the old school side and we're doing a super easy HTV tutorial and I think you guys are going to love it. So before I go any further, I want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay and see me okay. So please make sure if you can hear me and see me that you drop that in the comments. And once I have that for sure, then we will get started. I've got my computer over here, reading your comments and all the things. We just want to make sure we're working before we get too far into the tutorial. All right, hello ladies, hello. Hi Dee, hi Roseanne and Kristen. Hey Trish, welcome. Trish says she can't wait to see the baby bump. I'll show you guys here in a minute. It's a little hidden in this shirt today. Yeah. Kristen, I hope you do pick up some new tips. Good deal. Hi, Kathy. Welcome. Good. Oh, thank you guys. I'm so glad to be back from vacation. Vacation is so fun, but I always find myself super out of sorts when I'm not in my routine. So it's really nice to have my routine back. Hi, Carolyn. Welcome. Good. Okay. Well, we'll get into all this fun stuff here in a moment. As you can see, I basically just have a hot mess pile here on my table. I had some technical difficulties today. So we're going to be doing things a little old school today. And I am going to actually be moving my camera. But because I promised you guys an old school, really super beginner friendly tutorial, I recorded everything that I did in Design Space actually as a screen capture. So we are going to play that here in just a moment and I will show you guys how I got to where I am so that you know exactly how to get here if you are new to working with HTV. But during that tutorial, I'm going to move you guys up to my overhead position because I want you to be able to see everything that I'm doing. So we're going to do a little old school switcheroo because I only have one camera today. But we'll catch up here for just a moment. Yeah, Kristen, vacations can be fun, but tiring as well. Now, luckily, it was just my husband and I, so we hung out a lot. We kind of did whatever we wanted, which was really nice because, as you guys probably know, I am now 24 weeks pregnant, so I'm pretty tired. So we can't go too crazy with like being out and about. I didn't have a ton of tolerance for being out on the beach because it was pretty hot. We were in Orange Beach, Alabama, which is one of our favorite beaches to go to. So we were only out for a couple hours a day and that worked out great for me. Hello, Heat Transfer Warehouse. Welcome. Hi, Emily. I'm so glad to see you guys. Kathy, my due date is September 9th. So we're just a little over the halfway mark, just about a month past halfway. 24 weeks starts the 6th month. So I can't believe we are already this far along, but my little guy, which I am having a boy, is super active. So he's really crazy every day. He lets me know that he's here and everything's going well, at least as far as I know. Because he responds to a lot. He responds to my voice. He likes to move around when I take a shower. And he also has just started responding to bumps in the road when I'm driving. So when we were on our way home from the beach, every time we'd go over like a big bump, he would like, I don't know, like go kind of crazy and make sure that I knew he was doing fine. So I don't know if that means he loves it or he hates it, but either way, I'm okay with it because I know that he's okay in there. So, oh, that's cool, Kathy. Yeah, my birthday is September 5th. So it's definitely likely that we could end up sharing a birthday. We'll see. We just don't know how it's going to go just yet, but I'm super excited. I'm super excited to be a boy mom. I think this little guy is going to be a wild one, but I'm really excited about it. I'm okay with that. I'm ready for the energy. I'm ready for the fun and the action of having a little boy. Cause it's just going to be, it's going to be super fun. So it's been it was definitely a much needed break. I will say that much. We have been a little overwhelmed around here trying to get ready for the baby and we've been renovating our master bathroom. My husband has been renovating. I have not. since like mid-February. So that's kind of dragging on a little bit, but my husband just restarted all that stuff yesterday evening. So he's working really hard on that, and we just have a lot to do still. So the break was very needed, but now that we're past the halfway mark, it's time for us to put the pedal to the metal and get ready for this little guy. Oh, cool. Artemis said his or her daughter's birthday is September 5th as well. That's awesome. Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know. We might share a birthday, or he might come earlier than that. I don't know. But we have a bunch of birthdays around that time too. My nephew's birthday is September 12th. So if we go over past our due date a little bit, he could share a birthday. So we don't know. And before you guys ask, no, we haven't settled on his name yet. We have 2 names that we are still between. We literally go back and forth every day about which one it's going to be. So I think we're going to wait until he gets here before we decide on the name, and I'll tell you guys after. Because every other day we just change our mind, and I don't want to say anything and then change my mind later if I can help it. So we'll see. But we're excited. Oh, good. Roseanne said she signed up for Heat Transfer Warehouse yesterday, but no purchases yet. It's super fun, and Heat Transfer Warehouse is awesome. I was just emailing with them earlier today, and I don't know if this is Brooke on Heat Transfer Warehouse or somebody else, but they're an awesome company if you're not already familiar with them. Okay, so now that we've chatted and caught up a little bit, let's jump into this tutorial. So we are going to be working with a couple different types of HTV, and I'm going to teach you how to layer. That is our main purpose behind today's tutorial, because I want to talk about it. I know it can always be a little bit complicated, and to kind of up the ante on what we're doing, I am also going to teach you how to layer multiple types of heat transfer vinyl, which I think is really helpful because most of the time for me, if I'm going to bother layering HTV in my designs, I'm going to be using multiple types of HTV. And as a beginner, I remember being really intimidated by that. So I want to make sure that none of you are intimidated. You know exactly what to do, and I think it's really going to help you. So, yeah, Roseanne and Kristen both said, I think it makes sense to see, like, you know, what name is exactly just right. So we know that he's going to share my husband's middle name. So his middle name, of course, and his last name are already set. It's just going to be that first name that we're still in between. And I'm excited to share, but I also want to name him kind of uninfluenced, if you know what I mean. I just want to name him what I think he's going to be, and what Andrew thinks he's going to be, instead of, you know, hearing all the opinions. So that's part of why we chose to keep it a secret too. Our parents don't even know what 2 names were in between. They only know one of them. So I've kept it pretty private, but I think it's going to work out really well that way. And honestly, I'm excited. I'm just excited to meet him already, even though we have a ways to go. Fun fact before we jump into all of this, in the 6th month of pregnancy, baby is supposed to double in weight. So he is going to get twice as heavy as he was at the beginning of the 6th month if the growth is, you know, on track and everything. And so we have a big month ahead. A big month ahead, lots of growth, and I think the bump is going to get quite a bit bigger. It's a little bit hidden today in my little shirt because I have it tied, but it is definitely getting bigger. I'm feeling a lot bigger than I was before, but still, I don't think it's anything too crazy yet. But also keep in mind that I'm less than 5'2". I'm like 5'1 3/4". So me being fairly petite means that my bump is big and growing fast. Hi, Brooke. Okay, so it's Brooke behind Heat Transfer Warehouse, who is usually who I communicate with anyways, but the whole team is awesome. So if you guys don't already follow Heat Transfer Warehouse, you definitely should on all the platforms, because they are one of the companies, I will say this and then I promise we'll get to the stuff. But Heat Transfer Warehouse is one of my favorite craft companies to follow because their content makes me laugh a lot of the time. They do a lot of really funny, silly things around their warehouses, because they actually have 4 around the United States, and they're always making me laugh. So if you want to see some fun, crafty humor, definitely go follow them. They carry lots of great products, many of which you'll see around my craft room. Okay, so we're really gonna jump into this tutorial this time. I'm excited to play the screen capture for you guys because I actually kind of was troubleshooting in real time and I didn't make any edits to it at all. So you'll see kind of my brain processing through how I wanted to do this SVG, and I think you guys are really going to like it. Oh, thanks, Brooke. I'm glad you're excited. Hi, Precious. Welcome. She's from Illinois. Good deal. I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky. It is a beautiful 80 degrees and hot. But it's kind of nice because we came back from the beach and I was like, man, it's actually kind of cold here. So I'm glad that it feels like summer. I have a couple more months where I'll be outside, and then I think I'll probably spend most of the summer when I'm really super pregnant inside in the air conditioning. So I have a little more time outside before I probably pretty much get rid of all that. So yeah, anyway, let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to go ahead and play the screen capture. So in case you guys have not done a live with me before while I do a screen capture, I'm going to go ahead and mute my microphone so you can hear the pre-recording of my voice on the screen capture, but you can still communicate with me through the comments. So if you need anything, if you have any questions, drop it in the comments. And then as soon as the recording is finished, we'll hop right back in here and I'll show you how to cut this HTV and actually get it done. Good deal. Good deal. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into that screen capture and I'll see you guys here in just a minute.
So to get started with your project, the first thing you need to do is, of course, find an SVG file. So I found this 4th of July SVG bundle here on Creative Fabrica, and I'm going to be using this red, white, and blue that's actually behind this little icon here. But I wanted to show you the full process for uploading this because I promised a beginner tutorial. So I'm showing you all the steps. Now, the first step, of course, is to download this SVG. And then it's going to automatically usually go into your downloads folder. Mine pops up here at the bottom of my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And it's going to open up here, but the first thing we need to do, because we can see the little zipper across our file, is we need to extract our files. So I'm going to right click on this and click Extract All. And then I'm going to choose Browse, and I'm going to find a location that is going to be easy for me to find later. So I have all of my craft files stored on a DIY Alex hard drive so they don't take up space on my computer. And I have them all in a folder called SVG files. And each time that I create or I download a new file, I like to create a new folder for it. So I right click and then go to New and then Folder. And then I'm going to title it based on where I got it from because I always like to be able to reference things like this. So I will put CF for Creative Fabrica and then 4th of July bundle. Then I'll click on that folder and then choose Select Folder. So that way I know exactly where it's going to be extracting, and then choose Extract. All right, and then once it's extracted, I'm going to minimize all of this and go into Cricut Design Space. Then I'm going to upload the file by going to the design panel here along the left-hand side and choose Upload. And then I'm going to click Upload Image. Then Browse so that I can find that same location on my computer. So I'm going to go back to my craft files folder here on my hard drive and choose SVG files. And then scroll down to Creative Fabrica 4th of July bundle. And then we have all these different file types. I'm going to go under SVG and see if I can find it based on the name. But if you're having trouble with finding the SVG file, sometimes what I'll do is go into the PNG folder where you can actually see the images, and then I can see what it's actually called. So I can see that it's going to be PNG 5 red, white, and blue. So that makes it a little quicker. I can go back to the files and click SVG. And then it's usually in the same order. So I'm going to click SVG 5 red, white, and blue, and then open. Then I'm going to click upload. And we will click this file and it'll have green border around it. And then I'll choose the green add to canvas button. And that's going to put our SVG file right here in the middle. Now, the first thing I'm going to do while everything is all grouped together is I'm going to size it. I'm using a large adult size t-shirt, so for the width, I'm going to make it 10 inches, and I'm just going to leave it locked so that the height will adjust proportionately. Now, it's a little bit large, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit so that I can look at everything all at once. Now, I'm going to make a couple of changes to this SVG file. You could certainly cut this just the way that it is, but I'm going to make a few changes here. So in order to do that, I have to have the SVG selected in my layers panel, and I'm going to choose ungroup here. And that way I can work on things individually. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be using pattern HTV for our popsicle here. So I'm going to be getting rid of all of these star layers, just because I already have stars here in my pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the trash can for each of these layers so that I can have everything in one place. Then I'm going to make sure this works, but I'm going to go ahead and select all 3 of these layers. And to select multiple, I'm going to click on a layer, hold down the Shift key on my keyboard, and select all 3 pieces of the popsicle. And then under the combine function, I'm going to choose weld. And that should make it all one piece. We see that it has a couple of cuts here. So I'm going to try going into contour and getting rid of those cut lines, but we may not be able to do that. No, because that eliminates the whole bottom section. Okay. Well, let's think about how we can do this. We're going to get rid of that, and thinking here for just a moment, because I'd like this to cut in one solid piece just to simplify my file as a whole. So let's try a different approach. Let's go ahead and go into the basic shapes panel, and we're just going to choose like a square. We're going to make it kind of big, and we're going to try slicing this image out of our other one. So I'm going to right click on this image and click bring to front, and then I'm going to try slicing these images out of one another, and we'll see if we can get these other cut lines to go away. So I clicked and dragged a box around both layers, and then I'm going to choose slice. And we'll see when we pull the others away. Nope, those cut lines are still there. Bummer. Okay, well, Let's see if we can find a different shape in the basic shapes panel to replace it. So instead of using this SVG file, maybe what I'll do is I'll take this piece, and if you kind of look at it, it kind of looks like an upside down popsicle. I'm going to move my arrow until it rotates and flip it like this. And then I want to make it about the same size as this popsicle here. So maybe like a little bit smaller. And we can also make it a little bit thinner to kind of match the dimensions here. And then we can make our own popsicle. That way we don't have to deal with any cut lines. So of course this is optional. You don't have to make it this complicated, but sometimes I like working on my files just so that they make life a little bit easier for me. So now that we have this popsicle, I'm going to go ahead and delete each of these items. I'm just using the delete key on my keyboard to get rid of that. And now all I need to do is attach the colors accordingly. So since I'm going to be using the Patriotic bundle from 143 Vinyl, I know this dark gray shape is going to be my pattern vinyl, but I want my reds to all cut together, my blue to all cut together, and then this is actually going to be white. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the white layer and choose attach. And I'm going to change it from light blue to white. Then we have some different pieces here that are red. So I've clicked on the red part of the SVG. I'm going to hold down that shift key again, and I'm going to click on the and sign. And then I also need to find this little swatch here at the bottom. I'm still holding down that shift key and I'm going to click that as well. And then I'm going to click on attach. And then I'm going to scroll down and click on the blue layer and attach that as well. So that should make everything cut correctly on each individual mat. And then the popsicle stick color, whoops, I'm going to Control Z that so I can undo it. This popsicle stick color, I'm going to be using ivory for this. And that's another color of Starcraft Softflex. So I'm just going to be using ivory because I think it looks the closest, but it isn't a part of the patriotic bundle. So do keep that in mind. Now that we have done all this work, I am going to go ahead and save our image. So I'm going to call this red, white, and blue shirt. And I like to file all mine into different folders. So I'll put it in tutorial projects and then click save. That way, in case we have to come back to it, I don't have to redo all of this work. So then I'm going to click on the green Make It button here in the upper right-hand corner, and we're going to double check that everything looks the way that I want it to on the mat. So I am going to be cutting on a mat, so I'll select that and then click Confirm. Now, we are going to be mirroring all of our layers except for our printed pattern layer, because printed pattern HTV, or at least when we buy it from 143 Vinyl, it does not have a carrier sheet on top of it. So we're going to cut it the correct direction. And then, yeah, so we're going to do that without mirroring. Now, if you buy your printed pattern HTV from other places, you always want to double check and see if it has the clear cover sheet. If it does, then you mirror. And if it doesn't, then you don't mirror. Now, technically, this shape is the exact same either direction, so it doesn't really matter. But just for good technique, we're going to make sure that we mirror all of our other mats by checking each mirror button. And this one's a little bit big because it's got all this empty space here in the middle. But for the space, or for the sake of spacing, I am going to leave it where it is. If you wanted to save HTV, you could ungroup these things and then cut them in a much smaller section of your sheet. So it's totally up to you how you want to do that, but I like to keep my spacing exact, so I'm going to leave it as is. So then I'm going to click the Continue button and wait for my Cricut Explore Air 2 to connect. And for actually all of these mats, including the printed pattern HTV, I'm just going to be using the Iron On setting. So we'll see if this is going to connect. I don't know why it wouldn't. But I'm not going to be changing my cut setting between the Softflex and the printed pattern HTV. Of course, if you're using different types of HTV, then you may want to go ahead and change up that cut setting, depending on, of course, what your project entails. So I don't know why this is having so much trouble connecting, but I'm going to go ahead and end the screen capture. We'll hop back in to my craft table so I can show you how to cut out all of this HTV.
All right, guys, we are back. I'll let you guys catch up for just a second because I know that usually what I can see on YouTube is a little bit behind the way that it actually looks on my computer screen. But I hope that that was helpful for getting your project all set up and kind of explaining my thought process on how I went about this, because I know sometimes as a beginner that can be like one of the hardest parts. But I wanted to go ahead and address a couple of questions that I saw during the screen capture. One of them was from Artemis, who said, how do you deal with HTV shrinking when layering? If I do an offset, I usually end up with a shrunk first layer, which ruins the application of the second. So Artemis, the way that's going to work is HTV is always going to shrink. There is nothing we can do to stop it. The only thing we can do to minimize it is to actually apply it at a little bit of a lower temperature. But it's really important that you follow the manufacturer's instructions. So what I would recommend to minimize shrinking is, instead of having an offset that's an outline, I recommend doing a solid offset. So let me draw you a little picture. I have this beautiful sticky note here. Instead of doing an offset that is just a little, like, let's say it's like a circle, I would just do a solid offset with your star or whatever behind it, so that when you have that shrinkage, you're not going to be able to see it. Does that make sense? Like, so any shrinkage that I notice from the star, you're not going to be able to see in the offset. Whereas if I draw a star, well, you wouldn't do a star there, but you know what I'm saying. If you had a circle here and you just had an outline of an offset, then you're going to see all the shrinkage. But if you do a solid offset and remove that inner layer, which you could do using contour, that's how you would do that. You would create the offset and then you would go into contour and turn off the inner line to make it a solid shape. That way it minimizes the shrinkage. So that's my answer to that. That's just kind of one of those things that you just want to know when you're working with HTV. And that's what I would suggest. So I hope my beautiful drawings make sense. If they don't, then certainly let me know. Hey, Ashley, thanks for joining us. Okay, so I have cut a couple of pieces of my design already, but I wanted to show you how to cut a regular mat of HTV and then also the pattern HTV because it can be a little bit tricky. So when I'm looking at my blue layer, remember with HTV, we are always going to cut with the shiny side down. Now the shiny side is just basically the clear cover sheet, or the carrier sheet is typically what I call it. And that's essentially our heat-proof transfer tape. So that is always going to go face down on our mat. But sometimes that can be a little bit hard to tell which side is which. So if you're ever unsure, what you can do is use your weeding tool to just peel up the corner. And then you can take a look at which side is the clear sticky cover sheet and which side is the HTV. And then you know that the clear side needs to go face down. So I'm going to place it here on my mat face down. And I have my dial set to Iron On because I'm using my Explore Air 2. I'm going to use the dial for all of these basic cut settings, and then I can turn it to custom and access more from the computer if I prefer. All the other Cricut machines, remember that you'll select a cut setting from within Design Space. So it just depends on the machine that you have. So I have my blue mat selected in Design Space. I'm going to go ahead and insert the mat into my machine and allow it to cut. And let me switch back to your comments here. Okay, good. That makes sense. Good deal. Yeah, and the shrinkage is going to be minimal for the most part. And remember that whenever you are making things, you are far and away the most critical of everything that you make. So I wouldn't worry about it too much as long as you don't have any big gaps. The solid offset should make it pretty, shouldn't be super noticeable. So like I said, I didn't want to take forever and cut all day. So this is our only regular mat, and then I'm going to switch back into Cricut Design Space here and show you how I'm going to cut my printed pattern mat. So I'm going to remove the HTV from my mat, and I always like to go ahead and cut it out while I can see the cut lines so that I'm not weeding any unnecessary HTV and wasting it, but it's a little tricky to see. So I'm just turning it into my studio lights because they are nice and bright, and making sure I'm not cutting anything off. There we go. And I'm going to be applying my HTV with my Cricut Easy Press today because that is just easiest for me to use while I'm live with all of you. Okay, so now let's talk printed pattern HTV because this can be a little bit confusing. So I alluded to this a little bit during the screen capture, but I am using the Patriotic bundle from 143 Vinyl. And whenever you buy your printed pattern HTV from them, they print it in-house. So it does not have a carrier sheet on the front of it. It's just basically a plain piece of heat transfer vinyl. And then we are going to add our carrier sheet, or this, they call this a heat transfer mask, over top of it to basically serve as our transfer tape. So that's why it's a little bit different in this case. But I pulled out a piece during our recording of some of the Walla cut printed pattern HTV from Heat Transfer Warehouse, for example. And they have a clear cover sheet over the top of theirs. So if you have a clear cover sheet, you would just cut this as normal. And the reason I know that is because I took a weeding tool and I peeled back a corner. And so I can see, I don't have to peel back very much. I can see that there's a clear cover sheet there. So I'm just gonna cut it normally on mirror and shiny side down. But with this piece, I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna do it because I wanna get a specific piece of the HTV on my popsicle. So I'm gonna cut a little bit out of my sheet instead of placing the whole thing. So my popsicle, I want the pattern to run in this direction, like kind of right side up. So I'm gonna cut a piece of HTV out that matches where I want the pattern. And that's a really good strategy to use when cutting printed pattern HTV because the patterns can be so big. You wanna try to cut out your piece depending on how you want the pattern to lay. So I'm gonna look in Design Space here at my mat preview. And I can see that I need to cut something that is 7 inches high by 4 inches wide. So I know you guys may not be able to see the bottom of my mat here, but I'm gonna use my self-healing mat to measure that section. So I need to cut about a little bit more than 1 inch here. So let's see if this piece measures 7 inches. Okay, so it's a little more than 7 inches, but I may just go ahead and cut off this whole strip because that way it's gonna make my sheet a little bit easier to work with. And if I cut this accordingly, it's already about 4 inches wide. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim this just like that. And then when I place it on the mat, Cricut Design Space for some reason put it upside down. And I don't know why, but it doesn't matter because this pattern is the same either way that you turn it. But you just want to pay attention to all of that when working with printed pattern HTV. Now remember, because I did not mirror my printed pattern in this case, I'm going to put it with the pattern side up. There is no shiny side to put down, so I'm putting it with the pretty side up. I want to make sure that my pattern mat is selected in Design Space. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cut it. And again, I just cut this on the regular iron-on setting. Depending on where you buy your printed pattern HTV, that could change. But for the most part, I find that your regular everyday cut setting usually works really well with printed pattern HTV as well. Kristen said, I always place my label on the carrier sheet. Makes it easier for me to remember what side goes down. That's a great idea. Does the tack down help with minimizing shrinkage? So actually, Kristen, the tacking of each layer kind of makes it worse because most of the time the HTV ends up getting a little bit more time than it normally would if you just placed it all at once. So that's what can be kind of tricky about it. But the tack is necessary to remove the carrier sheet. So it's kind of one of those things we just keep in mind that each material that we work with has limitations, and a part of HTV's limitations is having that shrinkage. Okay, so I'm going to peel this off here, and I'm going to cut off right here, which is the top of my popsicle. And I'd have to look at the name of this pattern. I can't remember what it's called, but it's part of the Patriotic bundle. And I did link that for you guys in the description below if you're interested in trying it. It comes with this pattern, 2 other patterns, including they have like a red, white, and blue camo. And then there's like a cool like barbecue pattern that I don't think I have. Plus, it comes with a sheet of black, white, red, and blue Starcraft Softflex HTV. So the bundle in and of itself is a really great deal. Plus, you usually get a little bit of a discount for buying a bundle. So like I said, that's linked down in the description below for you guys if you want to check it out. Okay, so we're going to weed the printed pattern HTV first because it is the most unique. So when it comes to printed pattern HTV that does not have a carrier sheet, we need to manually apply that. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to start by weeding away the excess HTV, which if we use the correct cut setting should be super easy to do, just like that. So then we're going to manually apply it like I talked about earlier. So Ooh, we can just barely use this piece, which is super lucky. So this is a sheet of, like I said, they call this heat transfer mask. Essentially, it's just a carrier sheet. It's just a heat-proof transfer tape. And it'll ask you on the website when you purchase if you want a sheet of this. So you'll want to answer that yes if you don't have some of this already in your craft space. So I like to use mine pretty sparingly, so I always like to measure mine against the sheet so that I can save all of the excess for a different pattern. And then we're gonna apply this just the way that we would regular transfer tape. So I'm gonna start by peeling off the backing to expose the sticky side, like this. Oh, thanks, Kristen. She said, just looked it up. It's called Patriotic Plaid. So if you wanted to, you don't even necessarily have to buy the bundle. You could just go buy this specific pattern if you really like it. So I forgot to tell you guys what I'm doing, but I'm literally just laying down the heat transfer mask over top of my HTV, just like I would with transfer tape, okay? So nothing fancy there. Then I'm gonna use my squeegee tool and I'm gonna burnish it down to apply some pressure. And then I'm gonna peel away the backing and it's gonna end up looking just like a regular piece of HTV. So by the time you're done, if you've done it correctly, you have a piece of HTV with a clear carrier sheet that functions just like any other piece of HTV. So I'm gonna set it with the sticky side up aside while I weed the other pieces away. And this is a pretty simple design, so it should be pretty easy. So to weed, of course, we wanna make sure that we're weeding into the back of the actual HTV. So that shiny side is still down, basically. And then I'll just use my weeding tool to kind of find the corner and pull away the excess. And the nice thing about HTV is that it's a lot easier, I think, to weed than regular adhesive vinyl, because if you have a sticky carrier sheet, which most types of HTV do, some specialty types don't have a very sticky cover sheet, but most do. So if you do, then you can pull pretty hard on your HTV as you're weeding it, and you don't really need to worry about any movement. So that part makes it really nice. So here's the blue part of our design. This is just the popsicle stick. And like I said, I used the color Ivory in StarCraft Softlex. Just as kind of an off-white, kind of reminded me of a popsicle stick. So that's the color that I used. But I also think that copper StarCraft HD would look really pretty with that as well, if you wanted a different color, or just whatever you have on hand. You can even use a different type of HTV if you wanted. So lots of great options. So nothing fancy here, just some really simple weeding. What have you guys been crafting recently? Let me know in the comments. I feel like I have done so much sublimation recently, and I love sublimation. I think it's super cool. I also, while I was actually on vacation, I was watching the Cricut Card Summit. Did anyone else participate in that? I was watching the Cricut Card Summit as a participant. I didn't speak in it or anything, but I had a really fun time learning all about how other people like to do their cards. So that was fun too. But that's why I decided to do an HTV project today, because I was like, I just miss like old school. I miss my old school HTV and just working with it. So this is that big piece of red HTV that I told you guys. If you want to be a little more conservative with your HTV, you don't have to attach all these pieces. You can just cut them like closer together and then place them accordingly. And a lot of you said that you don't like to attach your stuff. I totally don't blame you. This is probably me as a professional crafter problem. I have so much HTV that I literally feel like I cannot use it all by myself. So I will tend to attach things for that very reason. But as a regular crafter, I do not blame you at all because I would not attach these things. I would just place them myself. And then we just have a few pieces to weed out. So we'll want to pay attention to like corners like that. We don't want to leave that stuff in there. And then like, whoop, make sure you do want to be careful when you are pulling the centers of your letters to be good and gentle, because it is easy to kind of snag your letter if you don't poke your weeding tool in just the right place. So that's really the only thing that you want to be cautious about when you're weeding your HTV. Okay. So now our whole design is weeded, which was really fast. So let's get all set up for our project here. Oh, Dee said, I forgot about the Cricut Summit. You know, Dee, it's funny you say that because I only remembered because they emailed me that it was starting. So that's why I started watching it. And so I was just watching my card stuff on the beach. And my husband was like, isn't that kind of work related? I was like, no. I was like, I'm not a speaker. I was just watching for fun. Those summits, you guys, I love participating in summits. They are so cool. They're so helpful and informative. I just absolutely adore them. Let me get all my pieces together here. And then I'll show you how I set my Cricut Easy Press. Kristen said her most recent project was a sublimation on canvas. Oh yeah, Kristen, I saw that from you because you were in sublimation camp. That was really cool. And then she said, and a shirt following Michael's tutorial last week using the StarCraft Electrofoil and Caesar holographic, which was so fun. I know, it was such a cool shirt. Artemis said, I'm brand new to this hobby, so I'm making all the things. LOL, literally, utterly obsessed with Cricut and want to put vinyl on everything and try every single technique. I have so been there, and I'm so excited for you that you're in that season because it is so much fun. So much fun. It is absolutely addictive. Roseanne has been making a lot of different cards. Did you watch the summit, Roseanne? Or were you just like, oh my gosh, sorry, words. Or were you just inspired to make a bunch of cards? Dee said, love the sublimation camp. So fun. Okay, so now let's talk about layering with temperature because I feel like this is where it gets really confusing especially when you're using different types of HTV. So if I was only using one type of HTV, the first piece of advice I would give you is that you want to follow the manufacturer's recommendations for time and temperature. If you post somewhere like a Facebook group and ask for help, you will get a lot of I do this types of answers. I use these settings. Don't listen to those settings. Go straight to the manufacturer. So in this case, like that would be basically usually the place you bought the vinyl will typically have the instructions and they're usually in the product page. So if you go back to the page on the website where you added that to your cart, a lot of times there is information there about what the settings should be based on the manufacturer recommendations. And that's what I recommend you follow. So in this case, I have mostly StarCraft Softflex. So if I was doing that, I would set mine to 285 degrees for 10 seconds. However, my printed pattern HTV would apply at 305 degrees for 15 seconds. So what I am going to do is I typically like to split the difference between the two because this is not a huge temperature variation. If you wanted to go super by the book and you were using types of HTV that have really, really different instructions for application, you may actually want to adjust your heat source for each layer of HTV. But because these are close together, I'm going to go ahead and split the difference. So I'm sorry my handwriting is ugly. I just was like scratching that down there to make sure I didn't forget. So I will probably set my Cricut Easy Press to 395 degrees for like, I don't know, 10 to 12 seconds, something like that. So I'm gonna set mine to 295 degrees for 10 to 12 seconds, and that's how we're gonna apply our HTV. So I'll go ahead and turn my Cricut Easy Press on. And it was last set for sublimation, so I'm gonna turn that way, way down to 295. And then the time I'm gonna set for, oops. Just gonna hold down the minus button for about 10 seconds or so. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Okay. There we go. So we'll let that warm up. And while it's warming up, I will layer this HTV. Now, the next thing that I really like to do when layering my HTV is I like to pre-layer all the layers together in the order that I want them. So what that means is I'm gonna lay down my first layer of HTV that I am going to be applying last. And a lot of times, you can do this a lot of different ways. There's no like hard and fast rule. It kind of depends on the actual project. But I'm gonna go ahead and lay this one down first, simply because I have a really big carrier sheet that everything can stick to. So here's my biggest layer, and this will be the last thing that I apply. So then I'm actually going to pull up Design Space, and I'm going to look at the design itself. Oh, sorry, you guys are talking here. Dee said, I love to make cards, used to teach card making at a local craft store, which is out of business now. And Roseanne said, yes, the summit have signed up for another summit. Oh, good, Roseanne, I'm so glad. Artemis said, to be honest, I hadn't done any crafts for over 3 years. Getting the Cricut has gotten me out of a major funk and my creative juice is flowing again. Very helpful for my mental health. Yay! I'm so glad that you're doing that, Artemis. That's amazing. It's so good to get those juices flowing again. Yep, I agree, Kristen. Always check with the manufacturer. Yeah, Roseanne, go ahead and share about the summits. Yeah, please. So if you guys are not familiar with summits, a lot of times the way those work is that they will have different classes going on over the course of a couple of days. And that's just my Easy Press heating up. And then typically if you want to view them on that day, the classes are free. Or if you want to get access later on, then you want to get the VIP pass so that you have access to the classes afterwards. And you can go back and watch the replays. There are typically bonuses that you get for purchasing the VIP pass. So I really, really, really love that business model because I love that you can participate for free, or if you want to take it up a notch, you can also pay, but you don't have to. I really, really like that business model. So please feel free to share those summits because I think that they are really, really neat. Yes, so the Bearded Housewife is a really, really neat creator, and he is doing kind of a solo summit for a bunch of craft stuff, which I think is just so cool. So he's going to be doing a really fun summit coming up if you guys want to look him up and join him. Okay, so I'm going to get back to my project here. And what I'm just doing is I'm back in my Design Space canvas. I'm looking at the project and I'm trying to look at how I want to line things up. So I can see that the W in white and like the H in white go directly underneath red. So I find that it's really helpful to look back at the original picture so that we can kind of see how we need to do this. That way it looks really professional and all put together by the time we are finished. So another thing that you can see in the original picture is that the L is kind of coming up underneath this I. So I know that I need to line up blue like this. And then we have, let's see, so we'll want to put the popsicle stick on underneath the actual popsicle. So I'll go ahead and put the popsicle down next. And it looks like it applies about here or so. And then we'll add the popsicle here on top. We can always come back and adjust the placement later if we decide we want to. So here's kind of a rough draft of the way that everything is going to go. And part of the reason why I like pre-layering the way that everything is going to look is because it helps to guide me when I place each of my pieces of HTV. So now I know kind of exactly where everything needs to go and I don't forget. And at the end, my design looks really nice and professional when I'm finished. So I'm gonna peel this up in one big sheet, and I'm gonna let those carrier sheets kind of hold everything together for me. And I'm gonna set this aside because now we need to prepare our shirt. So I'm gonna be using a raglan shirt, which means that it has like the colored sleeves. This one is from Hobby Lobby, and I originally bought it because I wanted to sublimate on it. But this was back when I didn't know a lot about sublimation, and it's only a 50% polyester shirt. And so you can sublimate on 50% polyester if you'd like, but it's gonna create kind of a faded look to it, which I'm not a big fan of. So that's why I decided to use this shirt for HTV. But Hobby Lobby and Michaels both have started carrying a lot more shirt blanks, which I think is really, really cool because it allows us to make sure that we go get a shirt sometimes at the last minute if we need to. So I'm really, really glad that they're doing that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, because I've had this folded up for a while, I'm gonna use my Easy Press to just get out some of these wrinkles right where I'm gonna be applying my HTV. And in fact, I might even move my shirt down a little on my Easy Press mat and do a little more de-wrinkling, just to make sure that everything is going to look really good. And it also helps to preheat your blank. So the next tool that I'm going to use that I really, really, really recommend for HTV beginners is called a t-shirt guide. And I wish that I had known about such a product when I was new to HTV. That's if I can find it. Here in all my stuff. Oh, here it is. Okay. These t-shirt guides are so stinking helpful. And the reason they're so helpful is because they help you line up your designs exactly underneath the collar where you want them. So you can get these on Amazon. They're in my Amazon store that I have linked down in the description below. And the way that they work is they have different sizes for different types of shirts. So of course this is the adult one. And I'm gonna place it underneath the collar just like this. And what this helps us do is it helps us keep our design 3 inches below the neckline, which is the typical rule of thumb. And it helps give me a little center point for my design. So sometimes you can rely on like the tag of the shirt and things like that, but the tag is not always going to be centered. So that's what I used to think that would work, but I really like utilizing this because it gives me a visual place for where I need to place my line. Let me head back to your comments so I can see. Let's see. Oh, good. I'm glad you like the design, Roseanne. Yes, I definitely recommend signing up for that summit if you guys are interested, because I think it's going to be really cool. Shronda said the popsicle is pattern vinyl. Yes, ma'am. So it is part of 143 Vinyl's Patriotic bundle, or you can just buy the pattern vinyl by itself. It's called Patriotic Plaid. But it's all sold by 143. And I really like using pattern vinyl. You guys, if you've been around for a while, you already know because I'm obsessed with pattern vinyl. But I really, really like that it offers a lot of dimension to your project without having to layer a million layers. Because if you were just doing this project, you would have to layer a bunch to get an effect like this. So I really like using pattern vinyl for that reason. Oh, yes, that's true. Hobby Lobby is also, and Michaels are doing a great job of stepping up their sublimation blanks. That is absolutely true, which is really, really nice for us. Okay, so the next thing that I like to do is I like to take my HTV and fold it in half and create a crease in the center. So I'm actually going to scoot my shirt out of the way so I don't mess up the placement of my t-shirt guide. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my HTV design that I have pre-layered, right? And I'm going to take the non-sticky sides and fold the edges together. So, can you guys see that? Maybe I'll move it up a little bit so you can see better. So I'm going to go to like the edge here of my popsicle, and I'm going to bring this edge together like this so that these two are meeting up. And then I'm going to press into that center line like this, and it's not hurting anything by me pressing this crease in. It's not hurting anything at all, but it gives me a center line so that I can use the center line on my t-shirt guide to line up my design. I know it's a little tricky to see, but it's right down the center like this. And now I can super easily line this up with my shirt. And then I'll adjust it here on the Cricut Easy Press mat. So I can see my center line is right here based on my t-shirt guide. So then I'm gonna take my center line here and kind of line up the center line of my carrier sheet with the center line of my t-shirt guide. And I like to go a little bit less than 3 inches up. So you'll notice that I have a little bit of an overlap here at the top because I just don't like it to look like it starts super low on the shirt. So we're not going too far above that. That's not straight, hang on. I don't like to go too far above it, but sometimes if the design starts kind of low, like this one is bigger at the bottom than it is at the top, then I like to go up a little bit higher. So not a lot, but I'm gonna go ahead and press my carrier sheet onto the t-shirt, right? And then I can peel this back and remove my plastic guide, but now I have everything centered where I want it. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work my shirt on top of my Cricut Easy Press mat. So if you guys don't already have an Easy Press, you really need to make sure that you have a Cricut Easy Press mat if you are working with an Easy Press. That is absolutely essential to getting a good press with your Cricut Easy Press. So, and I have a 9x9 Cricut Easy Press, 9x9, but I use the 12x12 inch mat underneath my Easy Press so that I always have some overhang with my mat so that I'm not heating up my table too hot. Oh, good. I'm so glad you like this process. Oh no, Shrana, you got to start today. You'll love pattern vinyl. Thanks, Dee. I thought this shirt worked out really well too. Good deal. I know, and you guys know I love pattern HTV. You know this is my thing, so I'm glad that I could remind you that it's here because I'm the same way. Sometimes I get a little stuck in my ways and I forget that pattern vinyl or particular types of vinyl or HTV are a thing, and then all of a sudden I try it and I'm like, gosh, I forgot how much I love this. Okay, so I told you backwards before. Remember how I told you the first layer we laid down is the last layer we'd layer? I was wrong. That's gonna be the first layer that we actually apply to our shirt. So now what we're gonna do, since we have all these carrier sheets on top of each other, is we need to go ahead and peel away the other carrier sheets, and we're going to tack each layer down for like 5 seconds or less. So it's not gonna be for very long. It's just enough to get those layers to stick together. So we're gonna stick all these other layers aside, and the very first one we're gonna do is the red. Oh wait, we have to peel off the blue because that was the next one we laid down. And the reason we do it this way is again because of these different carrier sheets. So we just need to make sure that we only apply one layer at a time because otherwise you'll just apply the carrier sheets on top of each other. You won't apply the entire design. Okay, so we only need to tack this down for 5 seconds or less. And I like to use a sheet over top of my HTV in between. This is called a Teflon sheet. You can buy them on lots of craft websites, or you can just use parchment paper. Totally up to you, okay? So I'm gonna do this in 2 separate presses. I'm gonna press the top of this for a few seconds, and then the bottom of this for a few seconds, and then we'll peel off the carrier sheet. So, I'll start my timer here, and I'm gonna push down and give it a little pressure, and then I'm gonna move it to the bottom. Okay, so that wasn't a very long time, but you'll be surprised. The carrier sheet will come off super easily. Just don't forget to add in that pressure using basically your arms, because with a regular heat press, oh, that dot didn't get enough heat to stick. So we're gonna redo this bottom section. Just make sure that you are manually pushing down with the easy press, as well as letting the weight of the easy press add some pressure as well. So I'm going to turn this to the side because I don't really need to get the top part here. And I'm just going to push down here and watch my timer go to 5 seconds. Then that should be enough. And our first layer is down. You can also utilize these clear carrier sheets for your pattern HTV. So if you have big pieces like this, I can go ahead and stick this to another sheet or something like that, and then I can use it for another project. So keep that in mind as well. So the next one that I'm gonna layer is gonna be the white, the word white. And yeah, that's how I wanna do it. So I'm gonna place it again with the W kind of off to the side, the H coming up underneath this E. Now, the carrier sheet, or excuse me, the cover sheet, the Teflon sheet I'm using is really, really important now, because now we have HTV that has no carrier sheet over top of it. And the reason that's important is because we need to keep HTV from getting on the base of our Easy Press, and we want to keep our Easy Press from messing up this HTV. So this is when either a Teflon sheet or a piece of parchment paper is really, really important over top of that HTV, so that in case the Easy Press moves, it's not going to mess up my HTV, okay? So now we're going to do another 5-second press over the white section. And I'm going to push down and apply some manual pressure. And we're going to peel our next layer. Now you'll notice that, of course, the red layer here at the top is going to get some extra heat. And that's okay, because we're only doing 5 seconds at a time. It's not going to be a perfect method, but it's going to be really, really helpful in the end. Okay, so next I'm going to do my blue layer and repeat this same process. Putting my cover sheet on top and pressing for 5 seconds. Beautiful. Okay. Do you guys have questions? D said, seeing pattern HTV being used is working for me. Hard to tell when otherwise. Yeah, I'm glad it helps. Kristen said, I'm finally getting more confident on the tack down. I always worry the tack won't be long enough. Absolutely, Kristen. Yeah, it really doesn't take very much to get the carrier sheet to go away. But I'll show you guys the key to making sure your HTV sticks here at the end. Correct. So Kristen is referring in the comments to whenever you use an old carrier sheet for pattern HTV, make sure that it's an HTV that doesn't have like glitter or some kind of other texture with it. This is like an everyday HTV for our soft flex. So it would be fine to work with pattern HTV. But if you don't want to press something else into it like glitter, don't use glitter HTV carrier sheets for printed patterns. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and lay both of these layers down just so that I make sure I place them in the right spot. But I'm going to end up pulling off this popsicle again. Okay, I want to move my popsicle stick out a little bit, like this and give it a little bit more space, because I need to center my popsicle here. So if I want to give it more space, I want to know that before I tack down this ivory layer, because that's what's going to go next. Okay, I like the way that looks. So, yeah. So next I'm going to do the ivory layer. Put down our cover sheet. We're going to tack down that ivory for another 5 seconds. Okay. Easy peasy. And then we'll put on our popsicle. And of course, this is going to be our final layer. So what we need to do here is we need to give this design the full amount of time that it needs to make sure that it's going to stick in the long run. So what do I mean by that? Now, I realize that this shirt has gotten a bunch of 5-second presses, but in order to follow the manufacturer's instructions, we need to give it the full 15 seconds or 10 seconds, whatever it calls for, to make sure that this HTV is going to stick like through the wash and make it last a really long time. So what I personally like to do, this is just an Alex rule, this is not an everybody rule. A lot of people would go ahead and press the full design for the full amount of time now that we're down to the last layer. You can most certainly do that. But what I have found is if you do that, you're gonna leave little lines in your HTV from the carrier sheet. So I'm actually gonna do one final tack to get the printed pattern HTV stuck down. And then I'm gonna remove the carrier sheet and then I'll do the full tack for the full time, if that makes sense. So if not, just bear with me, I'll show you what I'm gonna do. Dee said, Alex, do you use parchment paper? Do you use the parchment paper hinge method? I believe that's what Michael called it. Yes, Dee, I do, but that is for, that's for adhesive vinyl, not for HTV. But yes, I also use my parchment paper for the hinge method, yes. Okay, so I'm gonna tack this down, 5 seconds here. And then I'm going to pull this carrier sheet. And let me see if I can get you guys close enough to show you what I'm talking about here. But do you see in the ivory there where there was a little line left behind by the carrier sheet? I don't know how well you can see it on the camera, but it's right there. That's why I don't like to do the final press with any carrier sheets on. I like to wait until there's no carrier sheets left. And now I'm gonna do my final press of everything, because there's nothing to create any lines in my other HTV. So because this design's a little bit big, I'll probably do the top for the full 10 seconds and then the bottom for the full 10 seconds so that everything gets enough heat. So again, because we have no carrier sheets, we have to use a cover sheet, either Teflon or parchment paper. And this time, I'm gonna let my easy press run a little longer. I'm gonna push down until the timer goes off. And I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna let my shirt cool for just a second, because I don't wanna do back to back and give the top of this, a whole 20 seconds. So I'm gonna let my shirt cool for just a moment. If you had a big heat press where you could press this all at once, then you wouldn't need to do 2 separate presses like I'm doing. The only reason I'm doing this is because my design is like 10 by 11 or 12, and my easy press is only 9 by 9. So that's the reason I'm doing this in 2 parts. Thanks, Kristen. I'm glad you think so. I've done a lot of HTV, so I'm pretty good at knowing how that's gonna play out. Okay, so now I'm gonna adjust my t-shirt so that the bottom has plenty of easy press mat underneath it. You guys can see that line right there. That's my easy press mat. That's gonna ensure that the bottom gets really good pressure. Sometimes the areas next to the edges of the easy press mat will get a little shafted in how much pressure they receive, just because they're about to go off the mat. Now we're okay with the top of this design going off the mat because it's already received its 10 seconds. So it's good to go. We're gonna mainly focus down here in this area, which has not gotten its full press yet. Okay. So, and I'm probably gonna have to slide this over a little because the popsicle stick's not gonna get fully covered, I don't think. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of do this side for the full 10 and scoot it over and make sure this side gets some too. We might go here for an extra second just to make sure we got it. But by the end, we are all finished. So once you peel back that carrier or that cover sheet, then you are all good to go. So that's how you would layer a design. Essentially, the simple explanation is that you tack each layer for 5 seconds. When you get to the final layer, you do your final press, okay? And that final press is gonna be whatever the manufacturer recommended. But throughout this time, I've been able to show you some special tips and tricks I picked up from making a lot of shirts over the years. But keep in mind a couple of other things. After you press some HTV, you want to make sure that you don't put it in the wash for 24 hours. You are welcome to wear it from the second that it's pressed. You can start wearing it. Just make sure that you don't put it through the wash for 24 hours. So that way you are giving it enough time to really adhere to the shirt before you put it through the washer and dryer. Another tip, if you can, it's not required, but it does help, is it's really, really nice to be able to hang dry anything that you wash with HTV on it. HTV, of course, lasts up to high heat because that's how we apply it, but the dryer is pretty intense. The dryer is a pretty intense process. So if you can keep your HTV stuff out of the dryer, you're gonna be able to utilize it a lot longer. It's gonna way outlast itself if you don't use the dryer. But at this point, it's totally up to you whether or not that's worth it to you or not. But yeah, those are my tricks for HTV. I hope that was super helpful, especially if you are a beginner. Kind of know some of these different tricks. Yay, I'm glad you guys thought so. I'm glad you like it. I hope that you think it turned out well. I think this is super cute. We'll see. I'm not even sure I can wear it anymore because some of my shirts have had to get a little bigger these days, but I think it's super cute for summer. So I'll give you guys another couple seconds to ask any final questions that you have, and then we will wrap this thing up. Good. I'm so glad you like it. And I'm glad that you're here, Artemis. Welcome. I'm typically here a couple Tuesdays a month. So I've been trying to do 2 Tuesdays a month. Sometimes like the last couple of weeks, I wasn't here 2 Tuesdays in a row. So if you're not already, if you haven't already liked my Facebook page and you're not already in my Facebook group, that's what I would recommend for finding those real-time updates. And I can drop that link for you guys in the comments if you're not already a part of my Facebook group. I'll do that real quick and then we will call it a day. Oh, here, I can just paste it like this. There's my Facebook group in case you guys are not already a part of it. That's where you're going to get all of the updates. I make sure you guys always know what's going on here in my Facebook group. But if you guys don't have any other questions, I think that we will call this an afternoon. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to DIY Alex for more videos a lot like this one twice a month. Plus, I have tons of other tutorials. So if you don't want to wait for the next one, make sure that you check out the rest of my content on my channel because I've been making videos for a long time now. So I have lots and lots of different tutorials that will teach you all different kinds of things. Oh, good. Thanks, guys. Penguin is awesome. Penguin is my kitty cat. And he is doing fabulously. He just came back from my mom's house on Sunday. I went and met her and picked him up. So he is happy to be home after vacation. He likes going to stay with my mom, but he really, really likes being home. So he is a happy camper. All right, guys, I love you so much. Thank you for hanging out with me. All the hearts, and I'll see you